This time on Rad Rat Video, we're talking about Tony Hawk, we're talking about shin guards, we're talking about why vert skating died out, and a couple more things as well. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, a channel where you can learn new things about skateboarding, lots of different skateboarding topics. Today I'm answering your questions that were submitted through my website, radratvideo.com. Let's get right into them. The first one is from Brian. And he asks, is the term part, is it antiquated or becoming antiquated? What is the future of skateboard video consumption? So yeah, a video part is the part of a video, right? But if full-length skate videos don't really exist in the future, what are we going to call it? So let's say you spend a year, you do lots of filming, it's all pure street, there's no skate park footage, you put it all together and it's 3 minutes long and you release it. What do you call that if it's not a part of anything? It's kind of difficult. So this is like a skateboard feature. Is it, you can't just call it a video because that's too vague. Like it's got to be a word that means finished project. And I think it's just going to stay part for a long time. It's going to get to a point where like kids aren't going to know why we call it a part, but they're just going to pick it up from the older people anyway. And it's just going to stay part. I don't know if it's going to be anything else, but, I was thinking of when I record something, I usually say filmed. I went and filmed it. I don't like to say record usually because it's vague. It doesn't mean video. It could just mean the sound. It could mean like I took notes about it. But when you say you filmed it, it means you have footage, which is another outdated term. So film, I've never used a film camera in my life. My first camera was on tape. And footage is how many feet of film that it was. I'm not using film either, but if I say film and footage, you guys know what I'm talking about. And a lot of you guys use the same terms as well. It's out of date. It doesn't make sense anymore technically, but we still use it. And I think skate parts is going to stay the same way. Okay, next question is from Frank, who asks, do you think anyone could surpass Tony Hawk in the mainstream for skateboarding? Well, I don't think so because of the games. They just left such a huge impression on people. Maybe they skated for a while. Maybe they never touched a skateboard again. Maybe they never started at all. Maybe they were just gamers and they liked the series back then. People know who Tony Hawk is. And it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast and it was people who were just happened to talk about Tony Hawk's Twitter because he always posts about how he's like, you know, people think he looks like Tony Hawk, but they never realize that he actually is Tony Hawk. And people were talking about that, and they weren't skaters at all. And they just started making jokes, and they pulled out the names Bam Margera, Rodney Mullen, and Bob Burnquist. Like, they were just joking around, and they threw out those names in the conversation. They don't skate. They don't know anything about those guys. They just remember them from the games. But that was kind of a deeper dig. Like, they had to go a little bit deeper to come out with those. But, like, everyone knows who Tony Hawk is. And a couple other names from the games are probably more famous than any other mainstream skater right now. So think about like, you know, who's more famous in the world? Is it Bob Burnquist or is it Nyjah Huston? Skateboarders probably know Nyjah Huston a little more at this point, but in the world, there's probably still more people who know who Bob Burnquist is just because of the games. And I think Tony Hawk is just his name is out there way too much that he'll really be overshadowed anytime soon. It could happen, and it's just going to take a long, long, long time. And I think it might get to a point, kind of like I was talking about with the terms before, where people aren't going to remember that Tony Hawk was a real guy or that he was a skateboarder. They might just recognize the name from something. They knew he was in a game. I don't know. But it actually made me think of... I was reading this post that someone put online somewhere, and they're a teacher. They teach like 8th grade or something like that. And they were talking about the attacks on the trade centers. And kids in the class didn't realize that actually happened. They thought it was like a meme. And it's just so ridiculous. Like, I remember that. I was in 8th grade at the time, but like I remember that. And there's people out there who are old enough to think who didn't realize that it actually happened. So how long could it be before no one remembers who Tony Hawk's a real guy? Maybe they'll just think he's a video game character or something. But even if so, he will live on through that. So it'll take a lot for someone to replace Tony Hawk as the most famous mainstream skateboarder of all time. Okay, next question is from Daniel. And he asks, what's the deal with shin guards in skateboarding? Did skateboarding ever have shin guards that look like in soccer? Have you ever had bruises from flipping or spinning skateboard tricks on your shins? Sometimes when I do 360 shove-its, I feel the board just hit me just in the shins. Have you ever felt the same feeling? Yeah, I have felt the feeling. It's called a shinner. Pretty common, but like shin guards never really took off in skateboarding, except a little bit in freestyle. There's actually a graphic that Rodney Mullen put out right here that has a guy wearing shin guards on it. In freestyle, it was a little bit more common. It was kind of rare to see, but you would see that sometimes because in freestyle, you're doing a lot more quick spinning stuff. If you try to catch the board in Casper, like you're landing it right on your like right above your ankle, it's going to slam into your shin if it's spinning into it or something like that. You hit your shin a lot in freestyle, and still not a ton of guys would go with the shin guards. And I think there's a couple of reasons. Like I actually tried some. So I got really into freestyle around 2004 or something like that. I went to Walmart and I bought some shin guards because I was thinking like, if I could have a little more confidence in catching stuff, like Caspers and all that, then this will get me better and better. Like this will be a big thing. I won't have to film with them on. I'll just kind of learn tricks with them. But I ended up not using them for long because like it would just make my whole leg sweaty because it's just like this thing molded over your legs while you're jumping around and moving. Like I don't know how soccer players do it, but I hated how it felt to wear them a lot. And like, yeah, it would protect you sometimes, but there's so many other ways to get hurt too that it didn't seem like it helped as much as it should. In my case, again, some people use them and that's fine, but in my case, I didn't really get much use out of it. But the second thing I think gets in the way is just like the uncoolness factor. Like a lot of people won't wear helmets because they look kind of, they think it looks dumb. They think it looks like you're scared if you're rolling around with a helmet on, and that's protecting your head. Like if it's protecting your shins, then that's like such a lower thing. I have to wear this thing that everyone can see so I don't get an owie on my shin. People don't think so kindly of that. So yeah, if you want to try it, go ahead and try it. But I didn't get much use out of it. Some people do, most people don't. I guess that's all there is to that one. Okay, next question is also from Daniel. I did not realize that. He asks, do you think that contest skaters should wear a shirt that emphasizes a skater's stance? Is there a way to tell a skater's stance just by looking at him? Well, the first thing I was thinking of is that skaters have to wear their sponsor stuff, especially at a contest. Like that's why they get paid and they get free stuff to get the brands out there. So you're not going to see skaters wearing their stance. There was a contest. You probably don't know about it because you seem like you have started recently. It's the Goofy versus regular competitions. And I think it was hats that they wore that had their stances on them. But that was kind of the whole theme of the event was stance. But in most cases, you don't need it because if you ever see someone skating within a couple of tricks, at the most, usually it's right away, you can tell what stance they are. They normally start in their normal stance. That's not 100% true, but most of the time they will. And if you're ever skating switch, you usually kind of do this. Like you spend so much time going forward on your skateboard, you're kind of facing the way you're going. You don't ride completely sideways and skate like this. So you're used to facing forward a little bit, and when you go and switch, you tend to look over that shoulder slightly. And it's not that hard to tell most of the time when people are skating switch because their stance is a little bit different. If you watch them just a little bit, just one contest run, it should be fairly obvious. There's very few guys like P-Rod maybe where it would be genuinely hard to guess which one they are. But the vast majority of the time, it's no big deal. And the other big difference is different tricks. Because you're facing this way instead of this way, a lot of people find switch like front side and heel flip stuff a little easier because the way your heel's facing forward, you can flick that way a little bit easier than you would like a front side kick flip, like hard flips and stuff like that. A little bit easier to do heel flip stuff. So for a lot of people, their trick selection is a little bit different, but for the most part, you can tell just from the stance. And you may find it a little hard to get used to that and to be able to tell, but at least you're not into bikes. Because in BMX, I remember I used to watch the X Games and all that kind of stuff. Everyone would have their natural spinning direction and then the opposite way. So like the only thing different between this guy and this guy is that this guy loves to spin to the right, this guy loves to spin to the left. And so if they both do the same trick, it's better for this other guy because he did it his opposite way. And that's weird because there's really no way to tell. The only way I could tell was because the announcer would say something. He'd be like, oh, a 360 right into an opposite 360. And it's just like, wait, what? How would you know that? You just have to memorize everybody. I don't think there's a physical tell for that. So I think skateboarding is not quite as bad as other stuff. I'm sure in like skiing and rollerblading and stuff, they have opposite directions too. I don't know for sure, but yeah, so you'll get used to it in time. Don't worry about it. The next question is from Ian, and he asks, why did the popularity of vert skating die out? When I first started getting into skating, it felt like vert skating was a pinnacle and everything else was secondary. But it seems like over the past 15 plus years, it's the least popular of the different skate disciplines. Why do you think this is? Well, I can speak for myself a lot in this. Like, let's say you told 100 different street skaters, do a kickflip and film it. Like, go anywhere you want. It just has to be a kickflip. You're going to get 100 different things. You're going to get a kid doing it up a curb. You're going to have another guy doing it down 10 stairs, going super fast. You're going to have this guy doing it, on a hip or on a bank to fakie. You're going to have a bunch of different ways to do that trick, and different camera angles and like who filmed it and how, and were they following along or were they doing long lens, zoomed in from a distance. All of those kickflips will bring something slightly different to the party, and like if you told 100 vert skaters do a rock and roll, there's not going to be as much difference. Like it's going to be from a half pipe. Most half pipes look the same. Some have different kinds of extensions, or you might be able to do it on, sometimes they'll put like a picnic table on the side, so it's like this big vert extension, but it'll be a half pipe, probably made out of wood or a wood-like composite or something like that. Maybe it'll be painted, maybe not. And there's going to be a couple different angles. You'll either be on the deck filming, you'll be on the flat filming, and there's just less options as far as like experiencing it. So like a rock and roll on vert's harder than a plain old kickflip, but like it's not going to be as interesting to watch. And I think that extends so much. Like if you ever watch a skate video, and I'm sure you did because you're talking about how when you got into it, but like remember the Globe video, which was one of my favorite ones of all time. There's all this really interesting street stuff, and there's people doing different kinds of things. There's Chet Thomas doing these super long lines. He's doing hard flips into nose grinds, and like he has got this style. And then you got Rodney Mullen, you got whoever else was in that video, and they all have all this different stuff. And then there's the vert part, and it's always, and I really like the vert part in that video, kind of a bad example. I like it because they do a lot of no-handed flips. They'll do like a kickflip 5-0 without, it's not like a kickflip indie or whatever. It's just like kick flipping and landing back in the transition and stuff. But it's not quite as interesting in a lot of ways. It's not filmed as exciting. It just doesn't grab you the same way. At least that's the experience I had with the vert. I liked it, but the vert part in most videos usually slow the pacing down to a crawl. It's a lot of long lines where you got to wait from the land and pump back up to the other side to do the second trick. Then there'll be an area where he has to set up because he does a big trick and then he's got to come up and back down to fakie to do the second trick. Like it's a little bit slower. With street, it's always something new, maybe a spot you haven't seen before. He does a trick and then he's got to quick do a second trick. I just think there's a little bit more, I don't want to say creativity because vert can be plenty creative, but there's just a little bit more variety to it when you happen to watch a part. Now, that said, I really like watching vert skating. I think in competitions it got a little bit boring because you tended to see the same stuff. You would know which guy had which trick. Like whoever, what was that guy's name? Danny something, not Way, but some other guy. He would always try like a kickflip McTwist if his run was doing good. He would almost never land it. But like you knew everyone had this one trick in the bag, but they're always going to do these same safety tricks, and it kind of got a little bit boring to me. In a video part where they can do anything they want, it was a little more interesting, but street was always more interesting than that. And I think that's a big thing with freestyle too. Like there's a lot of really crazy tricks in freestyle that can blow you away, or me at least, because I know a lot about freestyle and I can tell when something's hard. But if it's just a dude on flat somewhere, it can get pretty boring compared to street. So that's why I think street above anything else, not just vert necessarily, but I think street just kind of got to be the most popular because of all that stuff. Not necessarily that vert did anything, like got too stale. I just think street surpassed everything in an excitement factor. So that's my thoughts on that. I don't have any facts and figures and numbers and X Games viewership stats or anything, but I have done some research on this before. A lot of people have asked about it, and I just don't have a solid answer. So I'm just telling you my experience and why I feel like it happened that way. If you agree or disagree, put that comment below. Maybe we can figure it out for good. So that's it for this time. Submit your questions to radratvideo.com. And until your question gets answered, make sure you tap my logo in the middle of the screen to subscribe and check out some more of those videos as well. Thanks for watching.